Hi, and welcome to week 7. I wanted to start by really looking at this final project that's due. We've been working on it all term long, so now's the time to really break it down, fix up anything that you would like to, and then we have to apply the textures, do a little animation, all of that. So really quickly, you're going to need to select one of the group of textures. So I still need a diffuse, a specular, and a normal map, but you can decide if you want it to be the hand painted or the photorealistic. So you're going to apply that onto your model. Then you're going to think about animation. Okay, simple is fine. I would like to see it clean, showing off your model and adding some, pizzazz to it. What would your model do? Some of you might have an object and you're like, this doesn't really move. That's fine. Think about how someone would interact with it. What happens if I toss it? What happens if I'm going to set it down? Can I open it? Can I turn it on? Can I, move it around? But this is going to be different than the turntable animation. So make sure you're having fun with it, thinking about all of those principles. I know we only had the ball bounce, but thinking about if it's going to be stylistic, really getting some squash and stretch and exaggeration. If it's going to be realistic, you still need to have a little bit of that, but it's going to be toned back. You're going to really need to think about the timing and the spacing of your keys. All right, so that's what these next couple of bullet points are about. Then you're going to create a turntable presentation, a video that's going to show your model topology. So you're going to display the poly count, aka a wireframe view, and then your unwrapped texture information. It's up to you, and same thing with our 7-1 practice activity. I don't know if you guys are comfortable using After Effects, if you prefer to use some other way to do this, but I do need it to be a video. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll show you a little bit in After Effects, and you can see what you think, but know that you don't have to do it this way. And then show your model in various speeds while maintaining the constant speed, aka rotating around the turntable. So you're going to submit a video of the turntable animation and your little animation video. So you should have 2. Make sure you're reading this whole section. If you're in Maya, that's fine, but I need your Maya file or your Max file. You need to turn in your texture maps because remember, those don't get kind of glued onto the object. I have to reconnect them. Any Photoshop work you do, and then your videos should all be in a zip file. Make sure it's a zip, please. There is a discussion board that you can look to if you want to get critique along the way before you turn in your final. All right, so some things that I want you guys to think about when you're creating this. This is Max and Maya. No matter which one you're in, you're going to need to think about what you're rendering and how. So here we have our width and height, and we have it over here. If you're dealing with a production quality, high definition is 1920 by 1080. If that's a little bit too much for you or your computer, you can do 1280 by 720, but we do want to get that high definition rectangle. A square is not going to quite cut it. And here we can turn up the resolution if you find that it's kind of not as clear. And then at the top, I'll show you in Maya, but we want to make sure what we're rendering. If you are trying to render a movie, don't forget you have to put in the range of keyframes, or if we're just doing a single frame, that's fine too. With your turntable, of course, it's going to be a range. Now, here's the main difference. You can render from Max or Maya directly to an AVI or movie file, and for this course, that's okay. But know for the future, I like to render out to Targa files, TGA or TARGA, and then I bring them into After Effects and render them as a video in there. Now, why would I take the time to do this extra step? Well, if you're rendering in Max or Maya, and let's say it gets 99.9% done, and for some reason you have a crash or an error in the file and it freezes or crashes or restarts, you've lost your entire video. So depending upon how long these renders are taking, that could be a significant amount. If I render directly to target files or JPEG or TIFF, and I get 99.9% of the way and it crashes, I still have the 99% of frames completed and those are set. I only have to re-render that last couple of frames where it crashed. Then I can bring it into After Effects, render it to a movie, and we're set. Okay, so in both Max and Maya, we have, let's see here, it's going to tell you what to render using. For this course, I am fine with you using any default renderers. We have Arnold, we have Mental Ray, but whatever you feel comfortable with, that's fine with me. So I could just use Maya software up here. You're going to give your file a name, and again, this is the same for both, so make sure you're giving it a name. Image format, this is where we would find, our QuickTime movie, or if we were going to render to frames, our target file. Name.extension for a single frame. In Max, it's going to be a check if you want single frame or movie. But we want name.number.extension if you're doing multiple frames. So for example, this would be, if I named this Gen Final, it would be genfinal.1.targa or whatever I ended up doing. gen.2.targa. I do not know why Maya has it this way, but if your extension's in the middle, there isn't a single program that can read a number 1, number 2 file. So name.number.extension. Showed you in the Max image, but in here, start frame, end frame if you're doing multiple files. Make sure in both you select whichever camera you're dealing with. So for here, I'm using my perspective, and then of course we talked about the dimensions, and then you're set to actually do a batch render or a render. Okay. Now for this turntable animation, I'm going to leave it up to you how you want to do it. Okay, for the sake of everything that we have going on and that I want it to be a clean and well done model and animation, you could just keep a stationary camera, figuring out whatever angle you wanted, and setting keys to rotate this, 360 degrees. Now, let's just say it here for right now. Okay. Now, when doing that though, you're going to have to go in and edit the ease in and ease out. We want it to be a consistent speed, but see how Maya kind of already added a little bit of slowdown at the end? Max will do the same thing, but you can edit that to however you see fit. Also in Maya, we can go down to the animation toolkit here, visualize, and then create turntable. This creates a turntable camera for you. I'm going to delete these keys really quickly. And then it does a turntable camera for you. You'll need to go into the settings to edit the timing, considering that was much faster. But it is another way to do it. That's actually animating the camera and not your object. But again, I'm looking for quality, showing off your texture, showing off your model. That being said, whenever you do it, we don't want your object to be super far away where we can't see anything. We also don't want it to be zoomed in where I can't see all of the work that you've done. So find a happy medium where we're showing off the object, but we're not, making it hard to see what we're looking at or zoomed in too much so you're missing part of your object. All right, so you can do turntable animations and do a render for each part. Make sure we have just a wireframe texture and then your actual set of textures on it. And again, for the hammer, I could do a little animation where it's actually, hitting against something. Don't forget that you can always move the pivot points of objects. So right now mine's coming from the center. I could always move it to be down a little bit so that the movement's coming from there instead. All right, so now if I go over here, our 7.1 practice, this is using your renders from your Module 6, the lighting activity. You're going to create a video presentation, kind of just showing off all of those that you did. So this is where I personally would use After Effects. If you don't feel comfortable, if you have a different way you'd like to do it, that's fine. But if you do have After Effects, I can do a new project. Then I'm going to create a new composition. Now it's important to know your ratio from your renders so that we can match. So I did 1280 by 720 for this. You know, we won't need 16 minutes, so I'll just do 1 minute for right now. This is actually milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours, just so you're all on the same page. You can give it a name, lighting presentation, and hit OK. You can always go to File, Import File, or you can right mouse click over here and import file. And then you're going to need to find your images. Called mine hammer. I held shift to grab multiples, and then I brought them in here. Now, if you bring in a still image, it's going to take up the entire timeline. I'm going to bring all of these down. You can hold shift to bring them all down together. But this is our timeline here. Now if you think about it, these are just stills. So I hit spacebar to preview, like 1, 2, 3. Probably don't need them to be held super long. So what I'm going to do is hold shift to grab all of them. If I put my mouse at the end, you'll see it's a double arrow. And I can click and bring these over. So now they're all short. Again, I'm hitting spacebar. I think they're still a bit too long, so I'm going to bring them in even further. I might do a little fade in and fade out. We'll see. So then what I can do is I can grab my top one, hold shift, grab my bottom. If I right mouse click and go to Keyframe Assistance, I can sequence my layers. And then I can hit OK. Now it'll go through them one at a time without any gray space between. Okay, so this is kind of what I'm looking for. I would love to see if you could add some, fade in and fade out between them, or if you wanted to do a slight zoom in. Don't go crazy with it, but you are showing off your work. If you twirl down any of them, you'll see we have transform here. Okay, so if wherever my slider is, my time slider here, I can always turn on the stopwatch, and that sets a key. Don't forget, I need 2 keys to make an animation. So I'm going to click this to create a key, and then I can go back to my original and turn my opacity to 0. Now I'm getting a fade in. And you can always move these to adjust the timing. You may need to adjust the timing of your actual stills now if you do have a fade in and fade out, because you'll need some overlap. We can do the same with position and scale to get a zoom. But again, if this is a lot for you, then just please show off your images. Give me a nice cut to cut to cut. And then when you've hit the end, you just want to bring this work area to the end. And you can see right here that I'm at 16 seconds and 6 milliseconds. So I can always go to composition settings, and change this to be 16:06. Because if I were to leave that bar over there, it would just render a bunch of black afterward. And then we can go to composition, add to render queue, or add to Adobe Encoder queue. If you have a Mac, you're going to need to do add to Adobe Media Encoder to select the H.264. If you have a PC, you can just do it to the render queue, and then you'll have H.264 as an option. When you do that, make sure you also hit render over here so that it actually renders your movie. Okay, so feel free to email me if you have any questions on how to make any of these presentations, the turntable animation, your animation, if you want me to take a look at anything. But again, try to have fun with this. We're showing off everything that you did throughout the term. All right, hope you have a good week, and it's almost the end of the term, so I will talk to you soon.